When you have a big project and your people would not want to cooperate, or worse, they would actually oppose and sabotage your project, wouldn't you want to get a new team? This is what the Yahweh felt when the people he saved from Egypt refused to drive out the evil people of Canaan. Well, not only that, there are many people nowadays who do not want hell but do not also want the kingdom of God. What would God do? He will get a new people who would love and obey him and would accomplish his righteous purposes. Hello again, life leaders. Last week we talked about the danger of letting your guard down. While the people of Israel were in the plains of Moab, preparing for the conquest of Canaan, Balak, the king of Moab, upon the advice of the prophet Balaam, lured the Israelites to their idolatry and sexual immorality. Of course, this upset the Yahweh, so he sent a plague against them. So when Phinehas executed Zimri, God was pleased to stop the plague. However, 24,000 idolaters and sexual immorals were already killed by the plague. Today we turn to the next story in Numbers chapter 26. Our message for today is entitled, A New Generation Set for Inheritance. Chapter 26 is the start of the next section of the whole book of Numbers. Now, why is that so? Well, the book started with the census of the first generation, the generation that left Egypt. Well, because of their rebellion, the Yahweh disinherited them from receiving the blessing that he promised their ancestor Avram. Numbers chapter 14 verse 22. But because all the men who have seen my glory and my signs that I did in Egypt and in the desert, yet tested me these 10 times and did not listen to my voice, they will not see the land that I swore by oath to their ancestors, and all those who despised me will not see it. Here's a very important lesson. We should stick to the Lord, be faithful to him. Just because he saved them from Egypt did not guarantee that they would make it to the promised land. Only the faithful ones from that generation, Caleb and Joshua, were able to make it. And it's the same thing for us, New Testament people of God. However, from that old generation, the Yahweh had to raise up a new generation of Israelites whom he can form and mold to love him. Oh, how Yahweh wanted this generation to be obedient, loving him, ready to dispossess the Canaanites and receive the land that he promised to them. And oh, how Avram wished he saw his grandchildren inherit the promises he received from God. And oh, how we all wish we can also get a new, fresh start. Nothing can stop our God from blessing faithful Abraham. By blessing his children, he is able to fulfill his promises even when the people he raised failed him. That's the old generation. Well, Paul says in Romans chapter 11 verse 29 that he will never take back the gifts and the calling that he had for them. The unfaithful children of Abraham have disqualified themselves from the blessings, but the Yahweh can raise up a new people who will receive his promises, the new generation. Well, if any one of us wants to be a part of those who will receive the unshakable kingdom of God, Hebrews 12:28, we better be like the new generation of Israelites whom God raised up to start all over again and fulfill his mission. Let me share to you a couple of major points from this chapter that we will be studying. Letter A, the Yahweh can restart with a new generation. Old out, new in. The old generation which experienced slavery in Egypt failed to receive God's promises to them because of their refusal to attack Canaan and because of their rebellion in the wilderness against God. The new generation of Israelites were privileged to receive the mission that their parents inherited and the blessings that Yahweh promised to their ancestor Avram. For some of you, you may find this chapter boring because it gives us a list of names of people, names that are so hard to pronounce. Understandable. But this is a very important part of the narrative. The list shows us that none from the first toxic generation made it to the second census, except again for the two of them, the faithful ones, Caleb and Joshua. Number one, Yahweh prepared the people to fulfill his cause because God cannot be stopped. Finally, the new generation of Israelites can do what the old generation refused to do, conquer Canaan. Verse 1, after the plague, Yahweh said to Moshe and Eleazar, son of the priest Aharon, take a census of the whole community of Israel by households. List those who are at at least 20 years old and eligible for military duty. So Moshe and the priest Eleazar spoke to the Israelites on the plains of Moab near the Jordan River across Jericho. They said, "Take a census of those who are at least 20 years old, as Yahweh commanded Moshe." These are the Israelites who came from Egypt. Just like in the old generation in Numbers chapter 1, Yahweh wanted to start a head count of people, of adult men who could serve as soldiers. Let's go back to Numbers chapter 1. Yahweh spoke to Moshe in the tent of meeting in the desert of Sinai. It was the first day of the second month in the second year after leaving Egypt. He said, "Take a census of the whole community of Israel by families and households. List every man by name who is at least 20 years old. You and Aharon must register everyone in Israel who is eligible for military duty. List them by divisions. One man from each tribe will help you. Each of these men must be a head of the household." It is not just about knowing how many men can serve in the military. The first 10 chapters of the book of Numbers show us how God prepared them for the conquest of Canaan. Well prepared. From the census to the camp arrangements to the Levitical leadership and responsibilities, the purification laws, and even the celebration of the Passover. Imagine the task that God had given Israel. It's enormous. They needed to be well prepared spiritually, organizationally, and militarily to conquer the promised land. Numbers 13 verse 27. This is what they reported to Moshe. "We went to the land where you sent us. It is really a land flowing with milk and honey. Here's some of its fruit. But the people who live there are strong, and the cities have walls and are very large. We even saw the descendants of Anak there." So it's a big job for a big land to conquer and a big people to expel. We will not be reading the whole chapter. It's 65 verses long, most which covers a list of names of people and the count of the men of each tribe. We will be selective with the verses that we will be reading. Number 2, Yahweh raised up enough people to take on the Canaanites. With several Canaanite tribes to drive out and a vast land to conquer, thousands from the complete 12 tribes of Israel were organized to fulfill their divine mission. This covers verses 5 to 51. Again, we will be skipping verses. We will only highlight certain points here, like noting the 12 tribes of Israel and the number of soldiers per tribe. Starting with verse 5, Reuben was Israel's firstborn. The descendants of Reuben were the family of Hanok, the family of Phalu, the family of Hezron, and the family of Carmi. These were the families, the first tribe of Reuben. The total number of men was 43,730. Verse 14, these were the families, second tribe of Shimon. The total number of men was 22,200. Now verse 18, these were the families of the third tribe, Gad's descendants. The total number of men was 40,500. Verse 22, these were the families, fourth tribe of Judah. The total number of men was 76,500. It's the most. Verse 25, these were the families, fifth tribe of Issachar. The total number of men was 64,300. Still a lot. Verse 27, these were the families, sixth tribe of Zebulun. The total number of men was 60,500. Still many. Verse 34, these were the families of Manasseh. The total number of men was 52,700. Verse 37, these were the families of Ephraim's descendants. The total number of men was 32,500. So put them together, these were the families descended from seventh tribe, Joseph. These were the families descended from eighth tribe, Benjamin. The total number of men was 45,600. Verse 42, the family descended from Dan was the family of Shucham. This was the family descended from the ninth tribe, Dan. The total number of men in all the family of Shucham was 64,400. Verse 47, these were the families of the 10th tribe, Asher's descendants. The total number of men was 53,400. Verse 50, these were the families of number 11, Naphtali. The total number of men was 45,400. Verse 51, the total number of Israelite men was 601,730. That's the sum of all those 11 tribes that we mentioned. So imagine that, in spite of losing the old gen, God was able to raise up more than enough men to serve in the military and charge toward the promised land. He is unstoppable. Even if people fail him, he can always start anew and fulfill his mission to cleanse the land from the evil people and that place with the new ones. If there were 601,730 men in the military, they probably were about 2 million Israelites if we were to include the count of the women and the children. He always leaves enough righteous people for himself, just like what he said to the prophet Eliyahu in 1 Kings chapter 19 verse 18. Yet I will leave 7,000 in Israel, all these that have not bowed to Baal, and every mouth that has not kissed him. Now you may ask, why were there only 11 tribes in the census? Where's the tribe of Levi? It's missing. Well, they were counted apart from the rest of their brothers for a reason. They were not involved in the military activity in the invasion of the Promised Land. We will find them in verses 57 to 62. We will get there later. Now, I do not think that this is just a list of complete tribes and clans and total numbers of their military. I think this is a very useful list for the Israelites to trace their ancestors in order for them to establish their legitimacy in the land. They are not strangers. They were the descendants of those military men. When they are asked, where did you come from? Well, each of them can say, I came from this tribe and clan of Israel. My grandfather served in the military which conquered the Promised Land. When they were challenged, did not your grandparents die in the wilderness for their rebellion against your God? Well, they could respond, yes, they perished in the desert, but God spared their children. They survived and I came from them. I'm one of them. God was so gracious to us to preserve each tribe and raise up the new generation which made it to the Promised Land. So that's their defense. There's another important feature in this new generation census. The old, annoying, undisciplined, hard-headed, constantly complaining, and rebellious generation are not part of the second census. That has to be made sure. They will certainly be forgotten. Yes, the people from the first census were ashamed, but that belongs to the past. That is why the second census is something they can be proud of and they can celebrate. The fresh and new generation of Israelites, mostly born during the journey, have never experienced the brutality of the Egyptians, but of the wilderness journey, not influenced by the old generation. That's very important. With great attitude and full of hope, an example for the future generation, are now listed in God's historical records. Censuses are very historical documents. How about you? How far can you trace your roots? 4 generations before you? It's hard, right? When there are not enough documents, or they were not documented, or the documents may have been missing. But are you not interested to know your great-great-grandparents? Where they lived, where they came from, how they lived, how they spoke, etc. There is another reason why this list is very important. Verse 53 will tell us later. We will talk about that when we get there. There is a more interesting thought here. If you were among the Israelites, which list would your name belong? The first census or the second census? Again, the first census was shameful. The second census was better. Can you imagine the list of names in the book of life? The Lord Jesus said in Revelation 3:5, the one who conquers will be clothed thus in white garments, and I will never blot his name out of the book of life. I will confess his name before my Father and before his angels. I hope your name is on that list of conquerors. Now, let me take a step back a few verses in verses 8 to 11, which is intriguing too. Number 3, Yahweh preserved children from the rebellious people to partake of his promises. With the grace of God, he gave the children of the unfaithful generation the opportunity to do better than their unfaithful parents. Verse 8, Eliab was the son of Phalu, and Nemuel, Dathan, and Abiram were the sons of Eliab. It was Dathan and Abiram, men chosen by the community, who defied Moshe and Aaron's authority. They joined Korach's followers when they defied Yahweh's authority. The ground opened up and swallowed them along with Korach, and they and their followers died when the fire consumed the 250 men. This was a warning, but the descendants of Korach didn't die. Isn't that awesome? God is gracious. Even though Korach and his followers were disgraceful, their children's name were cleared by God from their parents' sins. They were given an opportunity to restart. So we too should not impute shame and guilt, the sins of the parents, to their children. Every one of them, except for Caleb and Joshua, had shameful parents. The children cannot be made to pay for the parents' sins. One more fascinating thing about this, the new generation did not pick up and adopt their parents' rebellious mindset. How did God protect them from being influenced by their parents? Well, the scriptures doesn't tell us. I don't know either. We can only speculate. Maybe they developed the fear of God when they saw the Yahweh eliminated their parents in the wilderness. Let's recap this section. Letter A, Yahweh can restart with a new generation. Yahweh prepared the people to fulfill His cause. Yahweh raised enough people to take on the Canaanites. Yahweh preserved the children from their rebellious parents to partake of His promises. The new generation had to learn not to repeat the mistakes of the old generation. They had to be grateful for the opportunity to see the promised land, experience victory over the people they needed to drive away, and enjoy the grace of God. Letter B, the Yahweh has planned out a great future. This is exciting. The new generation of Israelites already knew which lands will be given them according to the size of their tribes and clans. God blesses His people with enough gifts according to their needs. There is no need to worry about them, the blessings. The point is, God was avoiding any confusion and any fighting over the lands they wish to inherit once they get there. Number 1, Yahweh blesses us according to our needs. He provides us with the proper quantity of what we need to use and make them grow. Verse 52, Then Yahweh said to Moshe, the land these people will possess must be divided using the list of names from the census. So they have to refer back to the census. Give more land to the larger tribes and less land to the smaller ones. Use the total lands from the census in giving land to each tribe. Now, a while ago, we noted that verse 53 tells us one important use of this list of names from the census. It will be the basis on how they can distribute the land to the people of Israelites fairly. If a family or a clan cannot be found in the list, of course, they can raise up this issue to Moshe even before they go and enter the promised land. They can say, hey, what about us? We're Israelites too. We're here with you. We are also survived our parents. We should be counted in. We're heirs too. We need a land to inherit too. Now, verse 54. Well, obviously, this is fair. I hope this is not controversial to us anymore. For populous tribe and clans, they need enough space for themselves. They need a bigger land. Moreover, smaller ones cannot have too much. Everyone should be given with only what they can handle and grow. Number 2, Yahweh shows no favoritism from among His children. By drawing lots, He was showing that no one among them is in control, but only Him. Verse 55. But the land must be divided by drawing lots. The tribes will receive their land based on the names of their ancestors. Whether the tribes are large or small, the land must be divided by drawing lots. Now you would wonder, why draw lots? What were these lots? What did they look like? Actually, I don't know either. Maybe each lot represented a tribe or a clan. They let chance decide which tribe will receive a certain identified land. The idea is they will all have equal chances. No one must have an advantage over the other. Moreover, there should be no cheating. In that case, no one can complain of unfairness or luck or misfortune. Now, should we adopt this practice? This was obviously the practice in the Old Testament by the Old Covenant people. The law instructs the use of it in certain cases, but not all. Well, how about us, the New Covenant people of God? Well, there is no prescription in the New Testament. Well, they did use it one time in choosing between Joseph and Matthias, on which one of them who will take the vacated place of Yehuda, who committed suicide, so that their number of 12 will be completed again. Acts chapter 1, verses 23 to 26. However, that does not necessarily mean that it's an example for us. Well, casting lots in itself is not immoral. There are probably cases that casting lots is a very appropriate and recommended practice. It is certainly not a replacement for using wisdom or seeking counsel when we try to make decisions. We should not also use this because we are too lazy to know the will of God. When they cast lots as God instructed them to do, they were assuming that He will make the fair decision for them, which families will receive certain lots as inheritance from God. Proverbs 16 verse 13 says, the lot will be cast into the lap, but all of its decisions are from Yahweh. What does that mean? That means that God is in control and not them. Well, that sounds good and reasonable to me. Now, here's a word of caution. We should not assume that when we choose casting lots as a method of making decision, that God will automatically intervene and help us make decision on that matter. Well, certainly we can ask him to do that. There's nothing wrong with that. Even though the inheritance of the Israelites were drawn by lots, the Yahweh has given them a good land that they did not deserve, and they will reserve just enough for their needs. Whatever the lots show, no one should complain. After all, for every blessing, privilege, and opportunity given us, we should learn how to be responsible for them by increasing them. Do not be envious of what God has given to another and not to you. Once you receive your blessing and responsibility, focus on them and make them grow. Be thankful. Number 3, Yahweh has specially assigned certain people to serve the spiritual needs of the rest of their siblings. So now we go to the tribe of Levi, the one that was not counted a while ago. The Yahweh did not give the Levites any land, but assigned them for temple services and distributed some of them to the tribal services. Verse 57, the families descended from Levi were listed as the families of Gershon, the family of Kohath, the family of Merari. These were the families of Levi: the Libnite family, the Hebronite family, the Machlite family, the Mushite family, and the Korahite family. Kohath was the ancestor of Amram. This list is quite important. The responsibilities of these Levites were crucial. Chapters 28 and 29 show what only they were assigned to do. Only they can perform them. We're talking about temple services and the facilitation of the 7 major feasts of Israel. Without them, their relationship with God may be compromised. Verse 59, the name of Amram's wife was Jochebed, a descendant of Levi, who was born in Egypt. She gave birth to Amram's children, Aharon, Moshe, and their sister Miriam. Aharon was the father of Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. Another importance of this list is for everyone to know the ancestral lineage of their 3 leaders, Moshe, Aharon, and Miriam. The author was giving them a trace of the ancestry of those 3. This is very significant for the successor priest. This helps them establish their legitimacy. Verse 61, but Nadab and Abihu had died because they offered unauthorized fire in Yahweh's presence. The total number of all the Levites, male at least 1 month old, was 23,000. They were not counted along with the other Israelites because they were given no land of their own. Verse 61 talks about the incident in Leviticus chapter 10. The Yahweh killed Nadab and Abihu, verses 1 and 2, for offering unauthorized kind of fire. Now, this shows that they do not get special treatment just because they were Levites. They received their just punishment. Everyone has to be careful. The Levites were also counted, but their list was in a separate record so that they would not accidentally be given a land that they should not get when God apportioned none to them. The Levites would have to focus on serving their siblings, not really taking care of the ground. Of course, they will receive towns from the tribes they were distributed. For those who were not distributed, they were assigned in the tabernacle. There was no temple yet. Numbers chapter 18. Well, for this reason, the host tribes needed to provide for their physical needs, the needs of the Levites in their land. Check out Numbers chapter 35 for that. Last point for this section, number 4. Yahweh has discounted the old gen from their unfaithfulness, but exempted the faithful. He had never forgotten Caleb and Joshua. Verse 63, Moshe and the priest Eleazar added up the total number of the Israelites on the plains of Moab near the Jordan River across Jericho. Among them, there wasn't a single one of the Israelites Moshe and the priest Aharon had counted in the desert of Sinai. Yahweh had said they must all die in the desert. The ones left were Caleb, son of Jephunneh, and Joshua, son of Nun. Verses 63 to 65 reminds me of Revelation chapter 21, verses 6 to 8, which says that only the victorious will inherit the new heaven and the new earth, and that all people will surely be punished. Not one will be missing or unaccounted for which place they were destined, whether new heaven or new earth or hell. For the last part of verse 65, it was hard not to agree with the majority, especially when they were angry. Caleb and Joshua had to stand up, disagree with their fellow spies, 2 against 10, and insist that God can give them the promised land. Numbers chapter 13, verses 26 to 33. They were the only ones faithful to Yahweh. Because of that, they will be rewarded. It did not matter which generation one belongs. Each one of them must be faithful to our God no matter what. And that's the same as for us. We will receive our inheritance if we do. Let us recap this section. Letter B, Yahweh has planned out a great future. Yahweh blesses us proportionately to our needs. Yahweh shows no favoritism from among His children. Yahweh has specially assigned certain people to serve the spiritual needs of the rest of their siblings. And number 4, Yahweh has discounted the old gen for their unfaithfulness, but exempted the faithful. The new gen had to follow the instructions of Yahweh on the partition and allocation of the land. They should not be greedy and choosy on which part they wanted. They had to trust the lots. And of course, they had to be grateful for whatever they received, whatever place that would be. A new generation set for inheritance. The Yahweh can restart with a new generation. The Yahweh has planned out a great future. We may not know what God has in store for our future, but He has figured that out already. We must follow His instructions, be grateful for what we receive on this temporary world, be responsible for them, and look forward for the new heaven and new earth. Here's a challenge. Are you part of the new generation that will inherit the earth? Matthew chapter 5.
Chapter 5. Now when Jesus saw the crowds, He went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to Him, and He began to teach them. He said,
Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you.